How's it going, YouTube? I'm out here again, this time on day 96 of my solid food vacation, cold press, juice fast, juice feast. The time's flying by, and it's hard to believe that I'm almost on day 100. Last time I recorded was day 90, and I was wondering then how much longer I had to go. And this week, in fact, I think on Wednesday and Thursday of this week, my bowel movements started to slow down a little bit, as if to say that I was passing juices more on those 2 days. And as soon as that happened, I thought maybe I'm done, maybe this is it. I think that Wednesday was almost entirely juices, and then Thursday there was a little bit more solids in the morning. Mainly a juice movement, had a bit of solids. But then, of course, on Friday and yesterday, Friday, and then today, Saturday, I passed some solids in the morning. So I know I'm not quite done. The solids were small but substantial, or on the smaller side but substantial. So I know I'm not quite done. Which is fine, because like I've mentioned several times, I've budgeted up in about 105 or so, maybe a couple days longer than that, 105 or so days to do this. Would be nice to be wrapped up by next weekend, but either way, I'm very satisfied with how far I've come. And if I have to break the juice feast before everything looks as though it's completely moved out of me, I think that'll be fine, because it's a slow process to break the juice feast, and in that week or two following, and of course the prune test will pass everything through, in this go round. So I think I'm okay with where I'm at. I was worried that my movements would just carry on with the same consistent frequency they had of the days 70, 75, 80, 85, but luckily they've slowed down to where it's like every other day about. So I'm happy with that. And I think in one of my videos towards the very end, I do plan on showing some of the things I've passed, because I do document all that stuff and keep a detailed log. And I think it would be useful to show to prove to people how much waste matter was built up inside of me, and I think was built up inside of everybody that hasn't done this, or that hasn't eaten entirely a raw vegan fruit and vegetable diet their whole life. People that have eaten mainly processed foods. No matter how in shape you are or how thin you are, if you've eaten a lot of processed foods or animal products in your life, you will have a lot of gunk in your food tube, in your digestive system. So I'm excited to get back to a new baseline from which I can live a everyday clean lifestyle with a clean diet. Maybe not a perfect diet, but a diet that at least it gives me a baseline from which I feel I can be very, very healthy. It's the middle of July, and it's still the middle of melon season. So I talked a little bit in the last video about some of the larger hauls one can get from the farmer's market if you just sort of introduce yourself to the farmer and let them know what you're doing juicing and what kind of fruits you're after. And if you buy in bulk, then they'll give you a little bit more. I did that this morning, and I'll show some photos of what I bought right here. That in total was 4 watermelon, a red seeded, a red seedless, a watermelon that's orange on the inside, and a watermelon that's yellow on the inside. The farmer had all those varieties, and I thought I'd get one of each just to sort of vary it and to keep the colors and the different types of produce in me varied. I think that's a good rule of thumb if you can do that. If not, it's also not a big deal. I mean, I'm also clean enough as is that I'm towards the end of my fast that I can subsist primarily on mono juices of watermelon or cantaloupe. You'll also see, and you also saw in that photo I had, there's a bunch of cantaloupe in there. I think it's about 10 or 11 cantaloupe, regular cantaloupe, and then I think 4 Gallia melons, which are like a cantaloupe honeydew melon crossbreed, where it's a bit yellowish on the outside and a bit green on the inside. Those are also quite nice. And then I bought 8 cucumbers or so that I'll use for my lemon ginger blast. That's like the other half of what I'll juice for the week, or maybe not quite half. You know, I can get those cucumbers at the farmer's market, but everything else, like the turmeric, the lemons, the celery, parsley, and cilantro, it's easier for me to just get at my local organic grocery store. So the big haul you saw in the shopping cart in the photo was only $74. And, you know, I mean, that's all ripe, picked this week, in season, nutritious. And, you know, I'm going to also spend probably another $50 to $55 at the organic supermarket. And so in total, that's $125, $130 for the whole week of food, which, I mean, I know a lot of people worry about the cost of juice feasting, and I get that. But if you're doing it in season and you talk to your local growers or your bulk organic grocers, you can get deals. You know, I know that for a lot of people that's tough, because you might not be in a position in your life with the stability to be able to have a farmer's market nearby that you can just walk a big cart to and buy in bulk. Maybe that requires a car that you may or may not have, or a bicycle, or, you know, it's harder to do it in one trip on a bicycle, which limits buying bulk. But if you have a shopping cart and you live within walking distance to a farmer's market, you can. But it also requires a place to store all those melons, maybe a refrigerator or a kitchen or space. You know, if you're living in a dorm where you don't have that, or you're living with mom and dad and you maybe don't have wherewithal over what you can buy or how to purchase stuff, or when you can go to the market, or, you know, then I get that. It can be daunting, but, you know, $130 for a week's worth of food, and that's, you know, I'm still on this juice feast, so I'm not going out drinking. Of course, it's still lockdown time, so, you know, there really isn't any socializing to be had, but I'm not spending any more money on drinks or takeout or splurging of food here and there. So $125 for the week, I mean, that's under $20 a day. And, you know, $125 for a week. I know some people that will spend that in a weekend and think that that's good, you know. So it's also, this is also saving me money, and doing it now in season is also the best time. I mean, if I were to, I started the juice feast in April, and looking forward to this time when I could go to the farmers markets and really just, you know, fulfill those cravings for that local biophoton rich ripe produce. You know, that kept me going, and now that I'm at the home stretch, I can just kind of kick back and enjoy that stuff rather than have to, you know, gut through like cold weather, or going to a grocery store and in the cold where there's nothing there. I mean, that would be really hard to keep going, but now it's easy to, so another week or 10 days doesn't seem very hard. But in a perfect world, I mean, it would be great to start the juice feast. I know Nathan did this in July, and then you have July, August, September, October-ish, and you're enjoying in-season produce the whole time. Looking forward to those apples and fall fruits and vegetables more towards the second half of your juice feast. But at least now, when I break my juice feast and enjoy a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, and I'll be able to eat that stuff in season too. So I intend to shop, and of course I'll still be juicing at that point, although more to supplement my diet. So I do intend to shop that way going forward for the duration of this season, because it's just the best way to get deals. The money goes straight to your farmer, which is important right now. Making sure those who supply us directly in a grassroots way are taken care of because of the pandemic, and, you know, things are still going to grow, so we still need to make sure those people are taken care of and can bring that produce to you know, those of us that can't grow it because we don't live on a farm or we don't have plots of land of our own. You know, the money goes straight to them, and then the biophotons go straight to us in the most nutrient-rich way, because that stuff has been picked that week. Whereas something you buy at the grocery store, it's got a little label on it. It's from halfway around the world, and it's not picked that week. In a lot of instances, that stuff isn't just popping right off the vine. It's picked before it's ripe, so it's not maybe as nutritious for you as the stuff you get at the farmer's market. And again, those folks, for them, you can assume the standards are about as good as organic. You can ask them. In a lot of cases, folks will just say, look, it's too difficult to, get the licensing to call it organic, but the farming practices are sustainable and honest enough that you can say they're as good as organic. Even though I'm on day 96 of this juice feast, I'm, looking forward to it finishing. But this week, when I thought I might be done by this weekend, and it turns out I have a few more days left to go, it wasn't the end of the world. I didn't feel so disappointed by that because, for one, it's the middle of melon season, but also I'm not hungry on the juice feast. My one thing about this experience has taught me that is about hunger, in that, I don't feel hunger in my stomach now. I feel it in my throat, and, that's not just because I'm drinking fluid, but when your hunger feedback system is not controlled by your, hormones that have been developed just from us being conditioned to put stuff in our stomach, the natural signal for hunger is a tickling in the throat. And humans eating their species-specific diet of, raw fruits and vegetables can quench that tickling in the throat by eating those raw fruits and vegetables, rather than putting that heavy, dense matter in our stomach to quell the loud signals our stomach would otherwise give us, because we've conditioned it to respond that way. And then once we've either drank juices or eaten an apple, eaten some fruit, or salad or what have you, that refills the carbohydrate fuel tank that the tickling in the throat indicates is going down. Fruit has carbohydrates, vegetables do too, and that tickling in the throat is indicative of you needing to refill that carbohydrate fuel tank. So, I'm drinking 1.5 gallons, or now upwards of 2 gallons a day, and I can show you in that farmer's market haul, that's enough to feed me about 2 gallons of juice per day. And drinking that periodically throughout the day, every 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, or when, and doesn't even really matter at this point, just as long as it's a bit spaced out, I'm able to keep that carbohydrate fuel tank full throughout the day. So I really don't experience hunger. And sure, I'm looking forward to having, some foods that I've missed, raw vegan foods, bananas, zucchini noodles, things like that. But I don't crave food. It's not like it's a crash diet. It's I don't feel starving. I feel on the contrary quite satisfied, and with my any hunger I would have, quite easily quenched by my calorie-rich juices. Again, I'm getting as many calories per day with my juices as I would otherwise be eating. Here in Washington, D.C., it's the 10th or 15th straight day that we've reached at least 90 degrees. So it's pretty hot out. There's not really any clouds in the sky, or just a couple. And I've got my shirt off again. You notice in my latter videos I'm not wearing a shirt. For one, it got warmer, and also I got leaner. It's nice to absorb the vitamin D. I also noticed that the videos that I post where I'm not wearing a shirt, especially in the in the thumbnail, I tend to get more views in those videos, and I'm okay with that. You know, I think that there is an evolutionary aesthetic to abdominal muscles or having a lean core, which is what I think a lot of people want when they're working out and dieting. You know, if you want someone's to take off their shirt, naturally one's eyes will go to their midsection and see if that person has a lean stomach or not. I know it's something I wanted for a long time, and I didn't really get until I went raw vegan, and I didn't really fully get until being on this juice fast. I mean, you can see right now I'm looking pretty lithe, pretty lean. When I break this juice feast, I think, you know, well, for one, right now I'm in a prolonged anabolic state, or excuse me, a prolonged catabolic state, the one where I'm breaking down. And then, of course, after I break this juice feast, I'll begin to rebuild, you know, muscle that I might have lost, and just in general. But you can certainly see my abdominal muscles are getting quite defined, and I'm okay with that, if that's going to get me more views. But I also think, you know, people look for that when someone's shirt is off, because there's an evolutionary indicator there, in that, you know, people might be attracted to those with a more defined midsection, because that indicates that that person doesn't have, is you know, thin and not fat. But I think even more so, through I've been on this juice feast, and I can see and I've experienced that the gunk you have in your digestive system, in your food tube from mouth to, you know, rear end, if you have more gunk in there, you will have an even less defined midsection. I mean, you can diet, you know, crash diet and do a lot of cardio, although I don't think cardio really does too much in the equation, but you can, you know, cut calories to try to lose fat, and you can gain a bit of definition, and maybe even a good bit of definition for depending on how much you do that. But I've noticed that, at least for me, the last 5 pounds, or the last bit of abdominal definition that I was never able to get, I did indeed get, and am getting even more on this juice feast, because that deep gunk, undigested matter is finally passing through my system. And, you know, in an evolutionary sense, someone would be looking for that, and to see if someone has a defined core. If someone doesn't, if someone's, you know, skinny fat, I think that means that you've got undigested matter in your small intestines, and I think that those things are indeed related. That last 5 pounds that you want to get rid of to have a defined midsection is not fat. And I've noticed that I used to crash diet a lot, but I didn't have the sort of lithe mobility in my midsection that I do now. And I mean, I haven't done any cardio. I go on light bike rides, and I do, you know, push-ups and sit-ups. But just the virtue of passing that old matter has caused my midsection to tighten up. And from an evolutionary sense, if you were to look at a potential mate, you'd want to know that they don't have that old waste matter in their digestive system, in their colon, but also their small intestines, in front of which the abdominal muscles sit. Because how clean your gut is a very good indicator of how healthy you are as a person. If you've got I've talked about this in my videos, John Rose has talked about this, but if you have an unclean gut, you can see that with someone who has an undefined midsection with their shirt off. And, you know, aside from just, you know, aesthetics from a visual point of view, or a beauty point of view, it really is a visual indicator of how healthy someone is in their gut, and how good a potential mate they are, because of how good their immune system is, and how prone they would be, or protected they would be from getting certain diseases. So, I think that's one reason people are so, you know, desirous of getting that sculpted abdominal look, because it's indicative of how healthy we are, from a digestive system perspective, because that gunk in your intestines, that last bit of waste matter you're getting rid of, it makes your midsection even more defined, more than crunches, more than cardio ever could. And I'm realizing that, like, when I do sit-ups and stuff, they're easier for me now. Even my like lower abdominals, I can move much more easy. And when I like do leg lifts, or if I say I'm holding a pole and moving my legs up, I have more mobility there than I ever did. For one, I'm not lifting old waste matter, but also there's just less dead matter that I think is related to the waste matter, just less gunk or fat in my midsection. And it just allows me to move that part of my body easier. So it's another benefit from doing the juice feast. I've really learned that last 5 pounds we want to get rid of, it's so hard to get rid of because it's not fat. You can't run it off. You have to get rid of it from a juice feast, or going, eating the foods that we were meant to eat. Eating the foods that have the proper bowel transit time. Those are fruits, raw fruits and raw vegetables. Making sure that stuff, once we eat it, is properly being passed through our system. And if you can do that, you'll always have a well-defined midsection. And of course, doing the juice feast is like a fast forward on that, or a reset on that. And it makes you crave that food too. You can't lose those last 5 pounds around your midsection without losing the gunk within your intestines. I know, I can feel deep in my bones that those things are connected on my juice feast. I've tried for a long time to get lean, and I was able to get some definition, but like the lower half of my abdominals, I could never get as lean as they're starting to get right now. You can't lose one without the other. You can't lose that cutaneous fat that is visual without losing the waste matter within your small intestine. And that food that gets stuck in there gets stuck because we're eating foods on the standard American diet that don't have the proper bowel transit time, because we are changing those foods by cooking and processing them. Or maybe just not chewing them thoroughly, but I think cooking and processing are the big culprits. So we need to eat the foods that have the proper bowel transit time, and cooking and processing changes that bowel transit time, and it makes it harder for us to pass those foods and thereby have the visually appealing midsection that I think a lot of people seek. I recently bought a digital scale that measures, in addition to weight, sort of body fat percentage, I think muscle percentage, but also most importantly, most curiously, that I've been wondering about, is my body's water percentage. I never measured it before, and now I'm curious to find out what that is. So I'm gonna to show you that momentarily here. It'll be the first time that I've measured it. It just came in the mail today, and you can see sort of maybe how I've changed, although I don't have the measurements from beforehand, but exactly just where I'm at now. I know that 70% water is what I would like to be, or I'd like to get to. Hopefully I'm getting near there. And I'll show you that now. Just showing a quick before photo. Again, this isn't right before the juice feast, but it's approaching where I was in the late winter, early spring. I was probably like in the upper 140s weight-wise. This photo is actually several years ago. So this scale actually sends the results to your iPhone. It looks like I'm at 125.4 pounds.
I think I was holding steady at like 129, 130 for a while, but looks like that started to dip. So that's, I think, a little bit underweight according to the scale for my height. Water weight is 66.2, and that's high according to the scale, so I'm liking that. Not quite 70. I'm not sure where I got that number that I wanted 70, I think from a John Rose video, so I can live with 66.2. And then I'm at 8.3 body fat percentage. I don't think I've ever measured body fat percentage before, so not really sure if that's how to feel about that, but it just, I think, is a number, so it is what it is.